Alright YouTube, we're back for part 2 of the Canon EOS R5 Mark II tutorial, and this is going to be a deep dive into our most admired section for this particular camera, and that is the autofocus operation area is where we are. And the reason why the camera shut off there is because I do not have my power savings set from when we did the power off type of situation where we actually did the factory reset on the last video. In this video we haven't changed that, so let's go in here and actually change that first. So I'm gonna hit the menu button and then head on over to where we have the wrench, and then we're gonna move over to one of the last things here, which is right here. It's called power saving. I'm gonna go in there. Screen off, I'm going to turn that to disable, and then screen dimmer, I'm going to disable that. Auto power off, and I'm going to disable that. You'll find there can be off after 1 minute. That's fine. I'm actually just doing HDMI, so there's that, and hopefully we should not have those issues. I did fully charge the battery. I do not have a card in here right now. I can put one in here if we need to. Let's go ahead and put a CFC Fast Express card in there, and obviously it shuts the camera off on the Canon camera, and it should sync right back up. And that is my wireless transmitter that's actually communicating there. So now we actually have a card in there, right? Okay, perfect. All right, so we do have a card in there now. All right. So let's get into this video. So I hope you're ready. If you want to grab a drink and get ready. So we'll start with this is going to be the autofocus section, right? So it's going to be the autofocus, everything related to autofocus that you need to configure. It's going to be done here, aside from the things that you can do in the custom controls menu, which we will cover in a different video later. That's more advanced. So we're going to get into the purple section here, and that is the second set of settings in the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. As you can see on the top up here, the first section was the red menu that we completed in the last video. If you haven't seen that, I will put that up right now, so you can go there. If you haven't done that, I would suggest that you do the part 1 first and then come back to part 2. Okay, if nothing else, let's go ahead and get underway with this part 2. Just make sure your battery's charged. My battery's fully charged, so I'm good to go while you do this, and once you set it up, you're good to go. Alright, so the first item on page 1 of the autofocus menu in the Canon EOS R5 Mark II is AF operation. Inside here there are 3 options. These are very similar to what you had in our DSLRs. This is the first time Canon has actually brought back one of the functions that I'll talk about in a second. Typically up until now on the mirrorless lineup, if you have this or you have the M series cameras like the M50, one of those cameras, you would only have one shot in the servo that you're seeing on the screen. You would not have the AI focus, and I'll explain all 3 here and why you want to use what where. You're probably wondering why I'm not on camera today. I don't really need to be on camera. Let's talk more about the camera itself. And walk you through the camera rather than you seeing me actually operate the camera. I think you already know how to do it, so it'll just go faster, right? And it'll be easier for me to edit it and get these things out much quicker. First option, one shot. If you select the one shot, what this means is for every single shot that you take, if you, let's just say you have a person in front of you, you take a shot, you're going to have to release the shutter button again and then press it again to acquire autofocus and take another shot. It's just one shot at a time, just like how the name suggests. Okay, that's what that one is. I'm not gonna beat it to death. That's what it does. Then let's move over to servo for a second, which many people are very fascinated about. If you're shooting birds, you're shooting wildlife, right? And if you're shooting weddings, as good as the autofocus is in the R5 Mark II, if you were to leave it in the servo mode, you shouldn't have that big of a problem, depending on the autofocus speed of your lens. If you have one of the newer RF lenses, this should not be a problem. If you have an EF lens with an ultrasonic motor, you should be fine. With any other screw drive motors that they had much older EF lenses, you're probably gonna maybe struggle. So make sure that you understand what the limitations of your lenses are when you're actually putting into servo. Once you put into servo and you put, you know, eye tracking and things like that we'll talk about in a little bit, it's very hard to miss this shot. It does an incredible job. Now the third one that I talked about, which is AI focus, which wasn't there in their mirrorless lineup before, and this is the first time they brought it out here. And I am stoked because I have missed this for about 5 years, and I'm sorry, Sony and Nikon people, we used to have this in our DSLRs and we love it. And thank you, Canon, for listening. I know I had made few videos, they're all gone now, but I had made few videos in the day sort of ranting about this, and either it was my videos or someone else's videos, or some engineer somewhere there probably decided, if you really want to get DSLR people to let go of their DSLRs, we got to give them what's in the DSLR inside these mirrorless cameras for them to do that. So thank you, Canon, for doing that. I think you're going to have a huge win here for the folks that shoot a 5D Mark IV and the different things. I actually had a young lady, actually, I think it's a young lady, that actually commented on one of my videos, and her name is Lisa Bowker. So Lisa, if you're watching, thank you for your comment. This is for you. You coming from a 5D Mark IV will really appreciate that the AI focus is actually in this camera, and I believe also in the R1 as well. So if you are looking to get the most seamless experience compared to your DSLR, the R5 Mark II is where you want to be, not the original R5. Again, that's something that you probably won't hear from a lot of YouTubers. So let's just pick one. Let's just pick servo, because we're going to set the tracking stuff later. What does AI focus do before we get there? I explained servo. I explained one shot. AI focus is the best of both worlds, or what's on the left and what's on the right. So one shot and servo put together is AI focus. So you're probably thinking, saying, Amar, what the heck does that mean? That means that when you first push and hold down the shutter button, it will start in one shot mode. The moment that subject moves, if you have a bird that is perched, for example, you lock on the focus because you pressed it, it acquired focus, it's nailed, great. The moment, as long as you're still holding down the shutter button, if that bird or that object or whatever it is that you're photographing moves, it automatically goes into the servo mode for you without you doing a thing. It is genius. Why is this very important for just not birds and wildlife, but also for sports? It's also very, very good for weddings where people are sitting very still. All of a sudden they just get up and move. It's also fantastic if you're shooting groups of people at a wedding, because the moment someone moves, it goes to the servo mode and it nails the focus. I'll give you another example. Another good example of this would be, let's say you're playing sports. Let's say you're photographing football, American football. When they're about to hike the ball, right when they're about to start a new down, when they're all down with the ball and the guy actually will hand the ball or you know, punt it back towards, not really punt, but you know, throw it back towards the quarterback so he can throw the ball. When that is happening, they're not moving when they're actually lined up, right? But if you were to acquire the focus like that and keep it holding, the moment they move goes into servo and you can get another shot, right? No problem. So this is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So you don't have to think about which mode you need to be in if you just can't decide. Try AI focus and let me know what you think. I use it all the time. Absolutely love it. So thank you, Canon, for doing this. So those are the three. I'm gonna pick servo and then move past this. Let's talk about AF area, which is item number 2 on page 1. There's a lot going on here, guys. So if you're overwhelmed, get a drink, relax, it's okay, we'll get through it, not a big deal. Spot AF means it's gonna be a very small spot in the middle of the screen. Okay, I'm gonna show you, like that. I'll put the cap on so you can actually see it better. Whoa, that didn't work out too well. Because the lens is live. Okay. There you go. So now you can see what the spot AF looks like. So that's the spot, right smack in the center, right? So I'm going to go back in here and then do the next one over, which is 1 point AF. And with 1 point AF, it looks like that. Okay? So spot AF is the most finite of the points on the sensor. 1 point AF, what you're seeing now on the screen, is a point in the middle and the surrounding area is slightly bigger. Okay, that's where it's going to focus. This right here is the expand AF area. When you select expand AF area, what you will see is it's 1 point with 4 other points surrounding it for support. If there's anything else that it picks up in those other 4, it's going to make sure that all of the stuff is actually in focus. Okay, so all what you're doing is now you're actually expanding the perimeter of how much of the sensor area that the camera is looking at. Next one over is called expand area around. What this does is it takes the same 1 point AF and gives you more points all around it. Okay, so now instead of 4 around it, you actually have literally 8 points around it with 1 in the middle, which is 9 point AF. Very similar to what we had in the DSLRs, right? That's where that comes from. Now what you're doing is these are flexible zones. So with these flexible zones, this is zone 1. You can move it around, like with your joystick, wherever you want to put this zone. You can do whatever. Now, once we configure the IAF later in the chapters, this zone can move to wherever you want. But check this out. To bring it back to the center, if you're like, oh my god, I put it up here, I don't know how to get it back, just push the joystick in, it'll come back. You can move it around everywhere, and if you can't push the joystick in, and you press the set button in, it automatically activates the tracking. It's now looking for things to actually nail. If you want it to stop, just press the joystick in and press this right here, and then press the set button again. Once you do that, it'll come back here, and then you can press the joystick in and you can come to the center. That's how that works. You have to play with it, you have to try it. Okay, let me see to the next one. This is the second zone. It's a vertical zone. This zone is really good if you're shooting a bride and a groom right in the center and you don't want anything around them distracting, or if you're shooting something like a great blue heron or an egret that is actually stationary on the ground walking. They usually are much more higher vertically when they're walking than they're wider. This works really good if you're going to use that. That's the flex zone number 2. Number 3 you'll see is totally the opposite of that, which is wide all the way across. This can be really good if you want to shoot something at the horizon line and nail like maybe a wedding party. If you're actually shooting a large number of people across the board and you want to make sure that their upper half of their body is actually in focus all the way through and it's tracking that, use this. It works really well. Next one is whole area. There's no point. You're probably wondering what the heck happened. It's using the entire sensor to determine wherever it can find a point or something to actually focus on. I'll take the cap off to show you. Wherever it sees, it's going to use every single point on there to nail it. That's what that means. Okay, I'll put this back on. Okay. Okay, this is spot AF again, and as you can see, it's got a little off on there, which is locked, and I'll tell you why in a second. This is 1 point again, same deal, and then very similar to what you saw before, which you're seeing right up top, which is right up here. You see these? These are identical. The difference here is these are locked, which means you cannot change them, right? It is going to use what it has programmed into the camera to do its thing. When you come back here to the top and this is turned on, it is telling it something where what this is saying is whole area tracking servo AF. What this means, guys and gals, it is going to use the entire sensor, even though you have spot AF on, which is the little dot in the middle that you see right here that I'm moving around. It is going to use the entire sensor when it's trying to track the subject. That's what that means. In servo, you have to be in servo, okay? That's what that means. Down here, you notice this becomes grayed out. You can't pick it anymore. You have to get out of this and go up here. If you want to tell it, I want you to be able to use the center point, and then I want you to track. This is very different than Sony cameras. Sony has, you know, expand AF with tracking. That's exactly what this is. The implementation is very different. Okay, guys? So pay attention. If you want it to track after you pick which point it should start with, and then it can track whatever it wants, whatever it sees, move, and you know, nail onto the frame. That's what's happening here. So once you have this turned on, there you are. If you have this turned off, there you are. And this one here, you can't pick this because the lens that I'm using does not allow for me to actually change the focus modes with the buttons that are usually on the lenses. So the lenses that have the buttons on here, this will start to become active. So I hope this section will help you. Just go back. It's going to take a little bit of work because it's a lot going on here, but it's kind of cool, all the different things that you can do here. Okay, so that actually concludes page 1. These 2 and 3 settings are critical to the success of your hit rate on your camera. Page 2. Now we're going to get into subject detection. Section 1 was just the AF operation. How do you want it to operate? Now we're going to tell it what to actually focus on when it's looking for different subjects. Obviously, subject detect has many options. You have people, animals, vehicles. You can choose none if you don't really want one, right? Or you can choose auto. Auto means it will determine if it's a person, animal, a car. You know, I think it does trains and planes and all these different things that it does. It will figure it out on its own. Okay, it works pretty good if you don't know. But if you know you're going to be out, you know, shooting some birds and wildlife and stuff, set it to animal. If you know you're going to shoot, car racing, set it to vehicles. And if you know you're going to shoot a wedding and things like that, you're most likely going to be shooting people. Just put it to that, and that'll become the priority. But if you're just not sure what the heck's going to happen and you're playing it by the ear, just leave it on auto, no problem, right? So I'm going to leave it to just animals for the heck of it. Eye detection. It can detect automatically whichever eye is closest to the camera. In the auto mode, it detects the eye that is closest to the camera. If you tell it, I want only the right eye, only the left eye, it's going to try to make sure it gets that eye. I usually don't use these two, but if you have a preference and that's how you use it, knock yourself out. I usually leave it on auto, and that gets me the closest eye. As long as the closest eye is sharp, I'm pretty good usually. It's not a problem. So I would leave it there. This is kind of important. So if you change this back to people, now we're going to register people. Okay? If you turn this on, it is telling you that take a picture of someone, whoever, a person, load it in, right here, which means you have to take a picture of a person and you have to register, which is then you save it down here, last option. It will save that data onto the card. If you format your card in the camera again, you most likely will lose this. So please be careful as you go and actually do these things, because formatting can wipe out things, especially if you do a low-level format. We'll get to that when we get to the rent section. That's later. Okay? So that's how you register the people in here, and action priority. This is the new hot thing here. So what does this mean? If you enable this, you can tell it what sport you're shooting: soccer, basketball, volleyball. I think there's going to be a lot more sports coming in here with the AI capabilities that the camera has, and it's going to get better. I have seen this in action. I have not used it, but even with basketball, it moves the focus to the person, whoever it pretty much has the ball or is about to get the ball. It gets there before you can even think. This here is pretty freaking absolutely incredible. I can't wait for my son's basketball season to start to really dig this big time. So super excited to have this in here. That's how this works. Back here, that actually concludes page 2. All right, let's move on to page 3. In page 3, we have the servo AF character. What this means is, in AI servo mode that we did on page 1, if you set it to servo, that's why I set it to servo, so we could fool around a little bit here, because you can do more things with it. Now you're going to tell it how the autofocus is actually going to behave. You are in total control of this camera. If you don't want to be in control, you can leave it in the first option, which is automatic. That's what it actually is defaulted to. If you want to change it, you have to hit, you can see the rate button. You saw how if you hit the rate button next to the menu button, you can get in here and then press the set button, and you can change, even in automatic mode, you can change how it behaves. If you move it to the left, which is -1, which is locked on, what that means is once it acquires focus on a subject, it is going to stay on that subject, locked on. If you leave it to 0, that's more like a balanced emphasis is what it's called, which means it's going to decide how locked on I want to stay, and if some new other shiny object looks a little bit, more compelling, I'm going to move. It usually does a pretty good job staying with it. But if you want to be 100% sure that the autofocus is locked on and stays locked on, move it to locked on. Responsive means it's going to move to the next thing that is moving closest to the camera at the faster rate. Whatever is moving in the frame and that autofocus thinks that it's important, it is going to move to it. It is not going to stay locked on. So if you move this to responsive and you're wondering, God, I missed the focus, well, that's probably why. Okay, so if you are very sure that you want your focus locked on and you cannot miss the shot, leave it to locked on all the way to -1. But if you're willing to get, hey, I just want high speed burst, I want a lot of shots, I don't care if I miss some, but I want the complete action. Keep one thing in mind. When you have it on lockdown mode, on -1, yes, the camera can shoot 30 frames per second, but it also can retard that down to 28, 26, sometimes 25, sometimes it could be 29, depending on what's happening in the frame. So your frame rate could drop as a result of that, but with the responsive, it's going to give you the highest possible speed that you've set, no matter what. Even if it misses the focus, it's still going to give you the shot. So you decide how you want to use it, okay? I usually leave it to 0 unless I know for sure I have to lock on. If I am shooting something in a very busy situation and I want it to stay locked onto that bird, I will probably do this. Go to lockdown and leave it there. Okay, I hope that helps. Enough for the automatic, right? In the previous R5, you had many options, right? Guys, you had the cases. The cases are gone. And they're gone because the autofocus on the R5 II has gotten so good, it's not even needed anymore. The automatic subject detection is incredible. But they still gave you the manual option. What does that mean? They're still allowing you to be able to actually configure this. So when you come on in here into the manual side of things and hit the same thing, the rate button, you can come in here. Now you can actually change the tracking sensitivity. This means you're going to stay locked on and responsive. How fast do you want it to jump from one to the other? Now you have a little bit more control. You can go to 1, 2, -2, -1, -2. Same concept, but you have a little bit more actual control. Okay. When you come down here, you can also control acceleration and deceleration of the tracking. What that means is how fast it jumps to the next object, right? If you really want very fast acquisition to the next thing, move it to the right. If you want it to go slowly, right, but more accurately, move it to the left. If you're going to leave locked on in the other one that we saw, I would most likely leave this to -2, like this, and then do the top one like that. Now it's not going to jump to the new shiny toy right away. It's also going to lock on the autofocus. That's sort of how these two work together. I hope that actually helps and not confuse. All right, so enough of that one. Now we're going to move on to page 4 of autofocus. This is really important. Servo first image priority. What does this mean? This is what I was talking about earlier. Now you're getting to customize and tune the autofocus even further. You're telling the camera now, hey, I don't care if you have even, nailed the focus or not. I don't care, right? Just allow me to take shots, right? So that's the release. Release means just take the shots. Allow the shutter to just continually take shots whether I have focus or not. Equal priority means the camera is going to make the determination what's the best thing to do based on the drive mode, which is what we talked about in chapter 1, on how fast you're shooting, 15, 20, 30 frames, whatever. versus what the subject is on the screen, and it's going to decide on its own. If you set it to focus priority on the right here, it means that it will not take the shot. You will not be able to capture a shot to the card until it actually truly can confirm that I have acquired focus, and it will allow you to take the shot. That's what that is. That's the difference there. So hopefully that helps. Number 2, one-shot AF release priority. Now this is if you're in the one-shot mode. Do you want it to be release mode, which means take the shot whether it's in focus or not, and then, you know, release the autofocus so I can acquire another shot. That's what this is. Focus priority means it's going to stay locked onto that. Take a shot, it'll still be locked onto that if you want to take another shot, right? And you tell it what you want it to do, but it will acquire autofocus on itself again if you were to take your finger off of the shutter button and press it one more time. If you do that, it will reacquire the autofocus. Preview AF. Oh boy. So if you turn this guy on, okay, this is very similar to being in movie mode, where it's going to autofocus all the time. Even if you just leave it there, the autofocus motor is running constantly, right? Everything's always in focus. You'll see. Look, I'm not even pressing any buttons, nothing. It's going to keep on looking for it, no matter what. Don't do this, guys, if you know for sure you want to save battery. 1, where do you use this? This is very powerful if you're actually trying to... Okay, I'll give you a real life example. Let's say you're shooting something in swimming. Let's say you're shooting some, you know, folks, you know, swimming in a pool. A lot of times there's a lot of movement in the water, and you really can't keep on acquiring focus all the time. It's kind of annoying, and you want it to continuously hunt for the objects to actually autofocus on. And what you want is the ability just to be able to hold down the shutter. It keeps on just taking the shot and continuous autofocus. That's what this is. It will do that in photo mode. Very similar to what servo mode does in video. Okay? That's the best example I can give you. Lens drive AF. What this means is once the autofocus is achieved, do you want the lens to continue to hunt for other objects? If you're in servo and this is turned off, it will still look for other objects. But if you're in one shot and this is turned on, it could actually look for other objects. If you press the shutter button again, it's going to reacquire focus again. So that's what the lens drive AF is, because you're telling the lens what to do now. AF assist beam. I usually leave this on, and the reason why is because sometimes when it gets into a darker situation, it will shoot a little, well, on the Canon cameras it's like a red beam, and it actually helps it actually focus. If you don't want that, you can turn it off, and then if you really want to just only use the LED one, you can change it to LED. I have not used the LED one much at all, because that's new to this. And if you do that, let me see if it comes on. I can't get it to do it. It's not dark enough. I'm trying to cover my hand. Yeah, I can't, because it's actually finding focus, so. Yeah, and it's kind of dark in here, guys. I don't have all the lights on. Okay, so that's what that does. I haven't tried the LED one, but it's similar to the red one. and I usually just leave this on. Alright, let's go to page 5. Limit areas. This is limit of AF areas. You can pick here what you want to see, what you don't want to see. If you don't want to do the locked ones, which you are not going to use, I usually have these turned off because I don't use them. I usually have it set like that for me. So when you toggle using the MFN button up top, only the ones that are up here up top will actually be available to me. If you have them all set, then you'll have to go through every single one of these in there. Okay, so that's how I've got mine set up. Link point orientation. This is a very, very powerful tool out of the 1D series cameras, and some of these mirrorless cameras have had it for a while. Same for both horizontal and vertical. What this means is it actually links the autofocus point, right, to the metering point where it actually is metering. Okay, so if you're using spot metering that we talked about earlier, you need to make sure that you understand that when you use spot meter, and if you do the same for both, which means in vertical and horizontal mode, it's going to use the same AF, AE, autofocus, auto exposure for each one of those. Horizontal or vertical is going to use the same. I use this right here, which is separate autofocus points, area plus the point. So for horizontal and verticals, when I shoot people, photograph people, their eyeballs are in different places. So what I typically will do is I use separate areas, right? Just like this, area and point, which means if you have AF area set, right? If you have your AF area set to, let's say, a zone in the middle, and you have the center point also activated, it's going to use that for horizontal. And if you move it to vertical, you could literally have, instead of zone, you could just have let's say flex A, the flex number 1 set, and you could have a point all the way to the top. So what I'm talking about is this. When you come back here, hold on, you can see here what it's doing. Hang on. So you saw how this part here actually changed now. Let me go back here. I'm going to show you something. If you use the same for both, watch me go back into the menu back here again, and you can see how this changed. Now I have access to all of them. You see that? Now watch what happens when I go into separate. Now I'm going to tell it for horizontal do this, for vertical do this. Watch what happens when I when I go back to this. Now it's telling you what to do. Oops, check that out. This one here is telling it for spot AF, do this. For if you want to do horizontal one way, let's go ahead and pick, let's say, this one. And then for the other side, let's say I pick that. Now, depending on which way you turn that camera and what you do, it's going to pick those AF points inside for you and make those the primary area where it actually focuses through. So you can customize the heck out of this camera. Pretty amazing. If you do over here, if you do separate AF points and only points only and not the area, Now watch what happens when I come back here. You see that? I can only pick these separate AF points. I can't pick the other orientations, which means it's going to leave whatever I pick to be exactly the same for both. If that makes sense now. The only thing that's going to be different is the AF points, but point only. This is area and point. I usually use area and point. It gives me total control over what I want to do with the different areas. Limit areas, we already talked about it. Which areas do you want available or not? It's done. Last one. Oh boy. Left, right eye detection. I usually leave this to auto. Let the camera do it. It's pretty damn good. Alright, and these are all the different ones that you pick in there. I usually have these turned off like that, and that's pretty much it for me. Auto and off are the two that I usually pick. I'm setting a lot of this up again because I reset the whole camera with you guys yesterday. Page 6, manual focus. I know none of you do this, I'm just kidding. If you do manual focus, this is kind of important. If you do peaking, go and come in here and turn it on. Focus peaking will come on, different colors will come on. Level, whether you want it low or high, it will just be more, you know, prevalent on the screen. You can pick between red, yellow, and blue. Pretty standard. Nothing too crazy here. Focus guides. Once you turn the focus guides on, if you've never seen focusing on a Canon camera. Oh boy, I think we might have lost our battery power here. Hang on, guys. These videos are long, so hang tight. It should start transmitting in a second, and we should be back in business in a couple seconds. There you are. We're back. Okay, so we were doing the focus guides. So to get into the focus guides, I do have to go into my focus. So let's come into the queue here. Okay, we got the focus guide on. Yeah. And I am going to move the lens to manual focus. Here you are. So what you're seeing is, you see these guides that are up top. By the way, whatever we're doing, it's being captured there. This is so easy. If you're into manual focus, you just bring it to the center. It will turn just green like that, and you're good to go. If you can't focus with this kind of manual focus, then I don't know what to tell you. It's so easy. And then there's your scale too on the bottom there. So okay, that's how that works. All right, I'm gonna come back to autofocus again, and let's continue on. Lens electronic manual focus. If you want to turn that on, you can. It's right now off. So what this means is, if you take a one-shot autofocus shot, and what this means is, if you go into a manual focus type situation, right, it will allow you to be able to take a shot in manual focus and focus it. Actually, I shouldn't have done that. I did it too fast. So it's actually off right now. So disable after one shot. So once you, I don't have it on one shot, I have it on high speed. If you shoot it on one shot, it's going to turn off the manual focus right after it. You go from one shot to enabled, which means if you take a shot, it turns the manual autofocus on right after that shot. One shot, enabled, it magnifies. What that means is, after you take a shot from the one shot mode, once you're in there, it's going to magnify what you see in the screen. Okay, so you can focus manually. If you hit enable actual size, it's going to get really big on there. It's going to go from wherever your autofocus point is, where it turned green on those arrows. That's going to magnify to the actual size of how big it is going to be. Keep in mind, this is a 45 megapixel camera, so it is going to magnify to that level. And if you really want to, you can enable one shot and then magnify. I like to use this one shot and then magnify. That's what I like. So typically I usually leave this off unless I really know that I'm actually doing manual focusing. And if I put on my Zeiss Otis or something like that on there, I usually use the focus guides and do my thing with it. So that is page 6, and now we're going to move on to the final page of the autofocus setup. Register, recall, autofocus related settings. If you want to register what we all did right now, you come into set 1. You can set up to 6 different that you saw in the previous screen right here. You come in here, all looks good. It actually remembers every single thing you did, including your eye calibration, which we'll do later. Okay, I already got mine, but it's actually turned off right now. And if I hit OK and register, as you can see now, the set 1 does not have that little, paper with a line in the to the right of it. If I really want to change the name of this, I could to whatever I want. I can just type whatever I want to type here. It'll start to do it. Kind of cool that you can do all that. So once you're done, hit menu. Okay, there you are, set. Recall, come in here. All the ones that you have programmed in there, it will show it to you. I can recall it, and bam, hit OK. So if you have multiple shooters, you can set up whatever their settings are. You can do all of that. You can recall it, or they can bring in their memory card with it in there, and all they have to do is just punch it into this section here, and then the entire autofocus of the camera starts working the way they are used to working. With that concludes part 2 of Canon EOS R5 Mark II. This is a lot to digest, guys, and if I've made any mistakes, I really apologize. It's really late at night, and I've been promising you guys to do this, but it's the best that I could do, and a lot more is coming your way. So with that, like, subscribe, be nice to each other. Go out there, create your magic. And by the way, I did get a new lens that showed up today that we will review at some point this week, and it is that guy. Oh boy. Give me one sec. Yeah, I got it. There it is. That's the new lens. It's a Viltrox 28mm 4.5 lens, and I guess the image circle is still 43.3. Pretty amazing. So more to come on that. So with that, hang tight, guys. A lot of cool stuff on the way, but I hope you found this valuable, and I'll talk to you in the next one.